You're listening to
Don't Take This Personally,
a
podcast about the business of creativity.
We are your hosts, wedding photographers, entrepreneurs, and friends, Cami Oliveria.
And Gabe Conover. Now let's get into it.
Let's get into it. And don't take it personally, whatever we're about to say.
Yes. Don't.
Don't. Do not take this personally. It's happening. It's happening. Okay, ready? Oh, are we recording?
Yes.
Oh.
Oh my god.
Timer.
I was doing a little guitar solo.
Oh no,
you know,
yeah, the
after
intro.
The intro.
Yeah.
They just heard the intro, even though
right.
we didn't
hear it. They heard it. You were just getting us in the mood. Actually,
exactly.
I did hear that in my head. I knew what you were doing. I knew.
Thank God.
No, I knew what was up. But here we go. Here we go. Woo!
Another new topic.
Another new topic.
We thought that this one was going to be a really good segue from last week's topic.
Yes. Last week you heard all about burnout and mental health. So that was a really natural progression for me. Today I was super into talking about imposter syndrome and anxiety.
Yeah.
We were really stoked to dive into this because...
And it's perfect timing because Cami, was discovering imposter syndrome about a year ago and now feels like she has a really good grip on it, right?
Kind of. So I wouldn't say I was discovering it a year ago.
Sorry, you're an expert now.
Yeah, I'm an expert now. No, I would say I've been well aware of my imposter syndrome and anxiety issues for quite a few years. What I was saying is that a year ago around this time, I was a part of some other conversations, like Victor and I were starting a podcast. That was the launching point for this one, basically. And then my friend had a podcast, an IGTV series where I talked about anxiety. I was going to say anxiety syndrome. No, anxiety and imposter syndrome. So a year ago, I was doing a lot of work in talking about this, and I was excited to talk about it again today because I feel like I'm in a very different place today.
Right.
Like this conversation is going to be very different than the ones I had a year ago about this, which is really exciting.
Right, and I'm feeling like I just experienced my first version of what imposter syndrome is. So at first I was like, what?
What? Well, let's start then by saying, what is it? What is it?
What a great... Let's kick off with a definition.
I love a definition.
And her definitions.
I love it. Okay, so anxiety... No. Imposter syndrome. I'm not going to define anxiety for you. So right now I'm going to define imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is the persistent inability to be... Gabriel.
Go ahead.
Imposter syndrome is the persistent inability to believe one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own effort or skills. Another definition is doubting abilities or feeling like a fraud.
Oof.
Oof, indeed. And I have
Hopefully we're not triggering a bunch of you because a lot of you might not know what this is like I did it, and now when you hear it what it is out loud, you're
like, oh, I have that.
Yeah,
I have
on a
that.
daily basis.
Yeah. So I for sure struggle with this a lot, and to be honest, it only gets worse the longer I do this. And I have been really aware of why recently, that I'm excited to get into.
Cool.
But I think a lovely way to open this would just be to kind of share our own experiences and stories with anxiety around our business and or imposter syndrome.
Right, and I think you should definitely go first.
I'll go first.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the beginning of my journey as a human,
I'm gonna sit back and
listen. You're gonna sit back and listen. So, but what if you have something to interject?
I'll lean forward.
Okay, lean forward and listen. Okay, here we go. We both have wedding season brain right now. I can tell we're hanging.
We're both
in there.
about to be screwed. That's why.
No, we're and not in the fun way. I said that right as he took a sip of water in hopes he would spit it out. Okay.
You really want that if you're sitting right next to me.
Okay, so here we go. Okay. In the beginning. So whatever imposter syndrome is, I honestly feel like I had like the opposite of it growing up. I was just a freaking fearless kid. I thought I could just do anything all the time. And we've talked about this a little bit. Like my first bout of entrepreneurial spirit, I was like a child in elementary school, like planning plays and casting my friends in them. I wrote them, I directed them, I starred in the thing. And I felt like I had every right to do that. Like that felt like a total, like I was meant to do that.
It made sense.
It made total sense. There have been other seasons of life, don't say it because you know what it is, where I've like thought I was going to be like a TV star and I like wrote scripts for things and that actually borderline resulted in something for a second. You know what I mean? Like I like did things that I was not qualified to do as like a 12-year-old and had no fear doing them. And then fast forward, I was like an 8th grader teaching my friends drums, convincing their parents to pay me like legit drum teacher rates. I wasn't qualified to do that, but I felt like I had every right to make money doing that. And then fast forward, becoming a makeup artist at age 16, I was walking into weddings with confidence and feeling like I had every right to be in that room, being a part of people's wedding days as a teenager. Whatever imposter syndrome is, that is the polar opposite. And when I tell this story to my husband, I do appreciate that he was like, even though you feel like you don't have that anymore, you obviously do, or you wouldn't be where you are today.
Right.
So I try to remember that like, okay, even though I think like anxiety has gotten the best of me, that spirit has to still be in me, or
Right.
I don't think my business would be where it is. But anyhow, that brings me to when I started shooting weddings. Someone asked me to shoot their wedding when I was in college. I 100% should have said no to that. I was not qualified to do that. But I believed in myself so much that I was like, yeah, I'll figure that out. I can shoot a wedding. What? That was crazy of me to agree to. But like, that is how much I believed in myself and my abilities to figure this shit out. So that is the spirit that brought me to the business I have. And then along the way, that went away. And over the years, I just like started doubting myself and never feeling good enough and like feeling sick on my way to weddings and like in the moment not believing I'm doing a good job and then coming home and looking at the images and being like, what the hell, I did amazing. Like, why was I freaking out all day? I freaking crushed this. You know, so I don't want to go into like what the depths of my anxiety looked like for a long time because I've recorded other conversations about that. And if you're curious on hearing that, please reach out to me and I will direct you to them. And to be frank, those episodes were like an hour long. We don't do that here. So I'm not going to go into like the depths of like how I talk to myself and the mental shit I'm going through when I'm really in an imposter syndrome season. But it's not good. And I'm fucking over it. Like, I'm over it because like, look at the business I have created for myself. Why do I not believe I'm successful or that I'm like worthy of all the things I want in my life or I deserve to outsource? Like I used to say like, oh, I'll outsource someday when I'm the photographer who like, what was I waiting for? You know, I hated my life for so many years. So this episode is not sponsored by Freedom Edits, but you should do that. You know, there's so much that I could say on this, but over the years, this just got the best of me. And it's like the more success that came, the less I believed it was real. So I'm going to put a pin in my story and pass it because the next phase in this would be kind of what I've realized recently, what it actually is about and how to overcome it and what to do about it. So I'm going to put a pin in it. Gabe, what about you?
Yeah. So I remember the first time Cammie brought this up to me, I was just like, oh yeah, when we talk about this, like you'll pretty much take the reins, which I do still think you should take the reins because you know more than I do about it. But I didn't really feel like I would have much to add because I hadn't really experienced it. Then I started opening a new business that was just completely foreign to me. And, you know, everything that goes into opening like brick and mortar and everything like that is just so different for what I was used to. And so everything that I was trying out, like I had to try a lot more different things and learn a lot more different things. And I feel like I finally experienced imposter syndrome in the last few months. And I definitely feel like I'm out of it now as I'm seeing like, you know, the direct fruits of my labor. But it's been interesting. And then hearing the definition too, like the specific definition is so triggering, I guess, because you're like, yeah, that is something that
Yep.
I've experienced. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs definitely go through it, and
For sure.
a lot of people who just take risks definitely go through it. And I was telling Cammie today that I feel like the reason I experience imposter syndrome, or did do it or experience it recently, is because I wasn't seeing the direct fruits of my business and the hard work that I had put into Good Times, which, if you don't know, is the name of my studio, in the beginning. And I'm definitely out of it now, and I'm seeing that what I've been doing has been working a lot. But since I just had a lot more hurdles to jump over, I was feeling absolutely like a failure for a little bit. And the reason for that is because every large, big deal, risky decision that I've made, especially over like the last 7 years, has really worked out.
Yeah.
And people like look to me as I have this reputation of being someone that takes risks and puts, you know, I don't want to say my life on the line, but like really like makes these risky decisions that for a lot of people really wouldn't work out. But because I'm such a tenacious and hardworking person, I guess they just really work out for me.
It's like something I heard on another podcast when people say that like you're so lucky. It's like, funny, is it, how the harder I work, the luckier I get?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
The harder I work, the luckier I get. Which, like, yeah, the thing that
From
the
another
decisions-
amazing photographer podcast by Jai Long.
Yeah,
That was
I
from that
love
podcast.
that.
Yeah.
I love that because it's true. Like the reason it's working is because I work really, really hard.
Yeah.
And so this was the first time where I was like really getting in my head about like, this isn't working. I don't think it's going to work. I think I'm failing. My reputation is going to be destroyed because I have this reputation of it always working out for me because I put a lot of hard work into it. But this was something that like I really didn't know anything about. And so I feel like it was one of probably, if not the riskiest thing I've done, one of the riskier things I've done because it's just completely foreign. And like starting a photography business, as far as like all the legal stuff goes, like it's really just you. Like there's not too much to think about. And so now that I'm dealing with government and stuff in a bigger way, it's just weird and scary and annoying. And I hate the government. And
oh my gosh, they're gonna come after us.
So yeah, that's pretty much what my story is.
Yeah, and it felt like when I was hearing you talk about that for you, it's like your identity and self-worth was so tied up into things working for you.
Yeah.
That it's like you would take it personally or take it like it meant something about you and your business and who you are as a person,
right,
if something you didn't work out.
Right. And the idea of being a risk taker and like an entrepreneur is something that a lot of people really don't understand and think is absolutely insane. So I also feel like there's just a lot of people in my life who, like, especially when I'm making these new decisions, they don't act that way anymore because I have proven myself to be successful. But especially in the beginning, like, people would be very, very doubtful of me and very, like, would tell me not to make, like, you know, to take the risks that I wanted to take. Mm-hmm. And when I did take them, they were just not super encouraging about it. And so, like, I just feel like now I'm like, well, what if, like, this is the thing that, like, they're gonna be like, told you so, like, in the back of my head, that's what I'm thinking. And, you know, for the most part, that type of stuff doesn't affect me too much. But it was like the first time that I'm like, this is it. This is the thing that's going to break me and the thing that's going to, like, be what they said. And now all of it's going down the drain, which is so ridiculous because I have so much more to speak for. Yeah. And, like, even if it did fail, like, that's a part of being an entrepreneur too.
Totally.
So lots of things that just, you know, I'm still a fairly new entrepreneur because this is only my second business. So it's all stuff that a lot of people say. And then once you experience it, you're like, oh.
Yeah,
I hope I'm doing okay.
Totally.
Am I not as cool as I think I am?
You're not.
I know.
No, you are.
Thanks.
Oh, I just want to humble you for a second.
Thank you.
wow.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at.
Yeah. So especially with your new business, just like the feelings of like, man, when is this thing gonna fall apart? And everyone, and I'll be exposed, and everyone they'll be like, whoop, we told you so.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I don't believe. It's not like I was in this for a long time. It was just there was a few things looming over my head that I needed to solve, and you know, I had to learn, and like, you know, it's not like I just have thousands upon thousands of dollars to invest either. So like I had to make very conscious decisions in what I was going to advertise. And like we talk about this all the time where we're like, you have to spend money to make money. And like I always spend money before I technically can afford it. And it's pretty much worked out for me in like a very positive way, because the whole point is to spend the money to make more money.
Yeah.
But it's always still scary to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's really interesting. As I was hearing you explain that, it really sounds like the spirit of what I was talking about in the beginning was there, that you were like, I don't know how to do everything here, but I will figure it out.
Yeah.
And you have.
Right.
Amazing. And that's, we're straddling some territory as something we're about to talk about in a future episode coming up, which is a little nugget there for you. But I really appreciate that about you and everything you do, that you just like have that spirit and like, I don't know how this is all going to work out, but I'm going to figure it out. But yeah, of course, that's going to cause some symptoms of, you know, anxiety or like imposter syndrome, because you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing, but we're going to do it anyways.
Yeah.
Totally get it. Something that I think that's interesting is when I've talked about this in the past, like as recently as a handful of months ago or whatever, I remember just being in a place where I was like, I don't know why or when this happened. Like I remember a year ago talking in other podcasts or whatever and just being like, what the hell happened to me? Like I'm so good now objectively. Like why am I now more insecure than ever? Like why? Where did that Cammy spirit go where I was just like gung-ho for, you know? And I've been in some pretty intense therapy the last year, and I feel like I know a lot more about all of this now than I did then. So I'm going to tell you. In the beginning of my photography journey, I positioned myself to be the cheaper option. And that was strategic because I was like, I'm going to be the cheaper option as my selling point because I'm brand new and I need to attract clients. So that, I mean, we all do that in the beginning, right? You use price as the selling point.
Yeah.
The problem with me is I did let that go on a little too long. I let myself be like a cheaper option when I really didn't need to be anymore. I let that go on a little too long. But when I was a cheaper option, I knew I would impress everyone I was working with. I booked most of the inquiries I got because I knew that I stood out in that price point. So like me compared to the other photographers they were looking at whatever price range it was, however many years ago, I knew I was going to deliver and blow their minds and exceed their expectations. And since I was just the cheaper option, they weren't like that attached to me or that obsessed with me. Price was the selling point. So in a lot of ways, that kind of brought the pressure down because I was like, hey, they're not that attached to this. They came to me because I was the cheap option. I know I'm going to freaking blow their minds.
Right.
And I could do that every time. So then as time went on and my prices went up, so that pattern of doing things, being the cheaper option, shooting a lot, did lead to like burnout and overwork, shooting 50 weddings a year and just like being so burnt out and not taking care of myself. So as time went on, I've learned like even though it scares the shit out of me, I need to charge enough to where there's a little resistance to the prices. I think that's how you know you're in a good price point. There should be some resistance, but also enough bookings to sustain you. Once I started
resistance in yourself, like for
no,
charging
like
that
from
much, or what
others,
then? Okay.
from other, like if you're booking we talk about this in pricing.
Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying. If you're booking every single inquiry you're getting, you're probably not charging enough.
Right. Yeah, totally.
If you're overbooking, and so when you charge enough to where you're not going to accidentally overbook yourself, that means there's some resistance. You're not getting all yeses, and I think that's a good sign. So, anyways,
Totally.
when I started charging way more, And to be honest, more than I ever dreamt I would make as a wedding photographer. So I still have some like limiting beliefs around that I'm trying to shatter. I'm now in a price point I never believed I'd be making this kind of money doing this job. And it scares the shit out of me because what comes along with that is higher expectations and people who are kind of like obsessed with me. And that feels so weird to say out loud, but like, you know what it's like when you are the photographer at this kind of price point, people hire you because they are obsessed with you and it has to be you. And that pressure got to me a lot for a few years.
Yes.
Where I like
no one's budget shopping. No one's
like at that price point, like people are like invested in you, you know, and the pressure of that, like I'm getting sweaty talking about it. Like the pressure of that was extremely hard for me to come to terms with, and now I can observe that that's when the imposter syndrome kicked in, when the pressure felt higher and I was scared of letting them down. Even though it makes no sense because objectively I'm so much better than even when they hired me, you know, especially because like in our business,
I like to look at it that way
there's
too.
often like a 6-month or a year gap between when they book to when the thing happens. So like I'm automatically going to impress them because I'm better, especially, oh my God, these weddings that booked me in like 2019 that are now happening this year. I'm like, you guys are getting such a better cameo. Oh my God, I'm going to fucking blow your mind. I've been really liking that. It's kind of reminding me of how it used to feel, which has been fun, but yeah, so I can recognize that my imposter syndrome stemmed from my like emotions and my sense of self not quite catching up to the success my business had brought. And so I felt like a total fraud. Like I was like, oh my gosh, all these people, I'm going to let them all down and whatever. And I never have. And I never do because I'm fucking good at what I do. You know, like, like this is crazy that we all go through this.
Yes.
So there's that. And then also the longer I've been doing this and the more quote unquote success that has come, the more attached I am to my business and the outcome of the business. And so the fear of loss is way greater.
Totally.
Like I was a lot riskier and was less scared of fucking up when like this didn't mean much to me. And I wasn't that busy and I hadn't been doing it for almost 10 years. And like, you know, but now it's like something that is scary to lose. And so the thought of messing up or, you know, that's all just, it's all gotten so much bigger than I ever dreamt. And so of course the imposter syndrome feelings are going to click in. But once I could recognize that actually helped me a lot with the imposter syndrome feelings when I could be like, wait, this is just because the expectations are higher. That does not mean I won't meet them. Like, I'm absolutely going to meet those expectations. What I'm feeling right now is just like a greater sense of expectations, and I'm going to fucking crush it. So, on that note, can I just move into what's helped me?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So, Cami, what's helped you?
Oh, okay. I'm so glad you
just
asked.
Let me ask the question.
Okay, yeah.
So, Cami.
Yeah.
In, your experience dealing with imposter syndrome, it's something that you just understand so much right now.
So much.
What do you do?
Yeah.
To like, when you're in that mindset
I'm so
that
glad
you're
you
a
asked.
fraud.
I'm so glad you asked. Thank you very much. So, really recently, I was listening to this podcast on sports psychology, actually, and anxiety around sports. And something they were talking about is those nerves we feel, the jitters. For me, I interpret them as bad, which most people do because they feel bad. They don't feel good. For me, anxiety is extremely physical, especially like in my gut. Like I will feel sick like my days before weddings. I'll have knots in my stomach, butterflies in my stomach. I'll be driving to a wedding and I have like a tightness and a shortness in my chest. I'm getting that way even talking about this right now. Like it's like so... like the jitters, you're nervous, you know? And so I used to interpret those feelings as like, wow, my imposter syndrome must be right because look at how nervous I am. If I knew what I was doing, I wouldn't be so nervous. So I listened to this podcast that talked about how these jitters are quite literally adrenaline, and it's kind of the opposite. Like it is adrenaline telling our body we are ready, we know what to do, and we're preparing you to start moving immediately. And ever since I heard that, whether that's real or not, don't care. It's helping me a lot.
Right.
I'm driving to weddings. I have the jitters. I'm feeling nervous, I'm feeling kind of shaky. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so nervous, I don't know what to do. And instead of being like, oh my God, I'm nervous, I must be awful, I'm like, no, thank you, body. You're getting me ready to move all day. Like, I'm ready. And so, you know, before weddings, I'm always like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. And Victor is now like, you're ready. And I'm like, yes, I'm ready. And so, and you know, I've learned to not be afraid of being nervous. Like, my dad always told me, like, the second you stop being nervous about something, you probably don't care that much anymore. So I've never been really afraid of being too nervous. Like, I've, you know,
life lessons with Cammy's dad.
I know, for real. Like, I've really used that energy to fuel just like working hard. And so I'm fine with feeling nervous, but this I don't know, this picture has just really helped me. And like, oh my gosh, I have the jitters. Like, it's actually my body telling me we know exactly what to do and we're preparing you to move. And that has changed everything for me. And then what's been kind of sweet my last few weddings is I've been sharing that with my brides.
That's
so cute. Like in the getting ready rooms when they're like, I'm so nervous, I'm like, can I tell you what I learned about being nervous? And then like all day for both my weddings last weekend when I said that, like my bride would be like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. Oh my God, wait, that means I'm so ready. Let's do it. So that's also been like a sweet thing for me to share with them.
Oh, that's
so that's that.
Wow, using personal life experience
to
network.
I know.
To like, be cooler.
I know, be cooler. Okay, so last two things I'm going to say and what's helped me overcome my imposter syndrome. Number one thing that helps me is looking back at old work. This is applicable to like anything anyone does, I think. Look back at your old work and be like, damn, if I was impressed with myself back then, how can I not be impressed with myself now? Objectively, it's so much better. I can look back to my work when I was obsessed with it and thought I had done the best thing I had ever done. And there are some weddings I shot early on moving here specifically that I was like, man, this is the greatest shit anyone has ever shot ever. Like, that's how confident I was. And then I compare that to what I'm doing now, and like, obviously what I'm doing now is light years ahead. So why am I not confident now? It makes no sense. So that's a big one. And then another thing I have learned in therapy and that I do after every shoot or wedding is as soon as I'm done working, I tell myself 3 things I did amazing right away. Like the second I get in my car. I'm like, what are the things I'm so proud of? And by immediately requiring myself that I recall 3 things I crushed, it's like my brain doesn't have the time to make up shit I didn't do well.
Yeah.
Like, I'm already thinking about like everything I'm excited about the day, which is amazing because that's what it was like when we first started.
Yeah.
Like, when I first started photography, I didn't know enough to criticize myself.
Yeah.
Like,
no, that's a good point.
I was only thinking about what I was excited about, you know, because we didn't know. Like, when you're in the beginning and you don't know what you don't know, you're like, you're so naive in an amazing way, you know? So right away, I tell myself 3 things I did amazing. My brain doesn't have the time to start giving me bullshit. It's great. And also not just photo-wise for me. Like, sometimes it's like, man, I'm really proud of how I handled that interaction with so-and-so, or I'm really proud of how I worked with this videographer, or like, so I allow like other things beyond just the shooting to come in, and that's really helpful. So all those things together have helped me. The last little thing is fact checking, which I feel like we don't even have time to go into what fact checking is.
And we can do it quickly.
Just like straight up give yourself the facts of the situation.
Yeah, it's more like I was telling Cammie, like, something that would help me is just listing the things, like, what is it that I think I'm doing wrong? Like, trying to be able to do that for me is like, what are the things that are like, I think that I'm actually doing wrong? And when I do that, I'm like, it's not actually that much stuff. I'm just getting in my head for no freaking reason. Yeah, like, why am I so nervous about this wedding? Ask yourself, what are you not confident in shooting? Right. And even to go more into like how she says that she looks back at like old work, I also would go a step further and be like, look at all of your old accomplishments. Like, what are the things that you have accomplished because of who you are, because of your job or whatever. Like, for me, I'm like, I bought a house last year and I've been here for a year. I'm doing a good job through a pandemic. Like, I've done a good job. You really have. And if I'm trying to tell myself otherwise, wow, then does that mean anything? It doesn't. So, wow. Straight up. And just like that, time's up. Time's up. I hope that was helpful. I hope that you are enjoying our little outro as it plays right now. Oh, we'll do a little air guitar. How do you play guitar? Not like that. Oh,
There was
Musicians.
probably bass.
Victor!
There's probably bass in this. Okay, anyways, bye.
Bye.